welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Procurement Pivots podcast. And today we are covering the subject about tell me about yourself. So, Donna, Hi.
Hello, how are you doing?
Oh, really good. Are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. This is such a key question, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very adaptable question, because I think when I think of tell me about yourself, I'm thinking in an interview, but actually a lot of the work that certainly comes up in my work with clients is around when you're given a compelling message internally. So how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think for procurement professionals listening to this, like building your confidence with how you answer this question is like one of the most powerful things you can do, actually. I think this shows up like almost daily, internally in your company, in your role, externally in the marketplace. And I think my experience is it feels like a really straightforward question, like just introduce yourself. But a lot of people don't really consider like actually what do I want to say if that question comes up. I think like it for some people this can come up daily. You're going into new meetings, new projects at work, new stakeholders, team members arriving. Like it's so common to be asked to introduce yourself that first time. And so I think just for me, kind of the purpose of today's episode is really to encourage you all to just really think about the power of this question and the confidence that you can build when you really are intentional with how you go about answering it in different scenarios. It can make a massive, massive difference.
And I think as well, it's a good way of showing people where you stand on something, like why you're there, but also I think the mindset limitations for people can be, oh, you're bigging yourself up, or, we're being too like shouting about our own achievements. I think far from it, like people need to know why you're in the room and how you can help them.
Totally.
And I think as well, it gives you that, say, the confidence to say, no, this is why I'm here. And
Yeah.
again, that might, if you have that pre-prepared and you have a message that you're carving up for different purposes as well, it gives you some really solid ground to stand on when you've got somebody quite senior coming along who you might feel intimidated by or
Yeah.
unsure about. So there's definitely a lot of confidence building as a result of knowing your actual message.
Yeah, definitely. So should we start with like internally? So if you're in a role right now, like what different scenarios you might be having to introduce yourself in and kind of some of the things to start thinking about. Does that feel like a good start point?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the one that comes up for me with my clients. It's when we're talking about landing a message, we're talking about influencing, we're talking about
Yeah.
showing people why you need to be in a room, why people do need to engage with procurement early.
Yeah.
It could be certainly for many of my one-to-one clients, they're now at that seat at
Yes.
the table. They're at the highest levels of procurement in their organization. So they need to have confidence in their message for themselves, but equally they need to be able to, when somebody goes around the room, you've got some really important suppliers there or stakeholders, you're there to say who I am, what I do, why I'm here, why I'm here. So we've got some structure that we'll go through, but that's the current scenario for me. And you've mentioned some great ones earlier. What would
Yeah.
you say?
I mean, I just think like actually, if you think about a typical senior procurement person within kind of within a role, often you're being brought into new projects, and often there is a whole entire project team of people that you're starting to engage with from scratch. We see people come and go all the time, leadership change, new team members, people coming into your team, as we've already said about, suppliers, actually, even from a negotiation perspective, I think, really, owning who you are and the version of yourself that you're going to bring into those really important commercial discussions. I think it can make a massive difference and it can really set the tone. So yeah, I think just really trying to get clear on, what is that important message that you want to convey. Like for me, it's not necessarily about memorizing it word for word. I think sometimes actually there is a danger when you try and learn it word for word, it does feel a bit robotic, or actually, if you're caught off guard and you forget the exact words, it can leave you a bit more flustered. But I think it's more the sentiment. What are the key nuggets of information that you want to convey when you're making those introductions to people that you're working with? It's kind of then working out what are those relevant pieces of information as well, because I think often my experience is that people often lead with a description. It's like, oh, I do this and I do this and I do this or I do this, or, a really common one is, I fell, especially externally, oh, I fell into procurement 20 years ago and I did this. It's like the chronological description of what you've done. Whereas actually, I think a big part of an impactful introduction is showing, what you're known for, the difference that you actually make, the impact piece. So it's kind of thinking about how can you weave that in, but without it feeling pitchy and without it feeling like you're like, overly selling yourself in an environment that you don't want to feel like you're selling yourself. And, certainly most people don't want to feel like they're being sold to unnecessarily.
Yeah, it can put people off, can't it? And I think as well that being sold to, but also feeling like you're selling, your relationship with sales and with selling and building that compelling vision, and trying to get people on board with your message can all be very we all have our own relationship with that and our own perception. So it's
Yeah.
definitely worth understanding like where the parts of it that feel comfortable for you and which don't. So
Yeah.
is there a structure? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say I'm
Yeah.
smiling because I had a conversation with a procurement leader earlier on today, actually, and this whole conversation came up, and we were talking about, just some of the complexities with procurement and perceptions of procurement. We're going to be coming on to that on a future
Mm-hmm.
episode, very coming to you very soon.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I think that dynamic of procurement with sales, I think is such an interesting dynamic, and
Yeah.
it's almost like, a lot of people feel, well, we're totally opposite sides of the table. I think actually, a lot of procurement professionals do feel like they've seen some really negative behaviour and attributes that they personally can't really relate to in sales professionals. So it's almost then there's almost this like rebellion against, I don't want to be like them over there, I don't want to come across like a salesperson. But I think, for me, it comes back to like, actually, this is about service, not selling, and it's about enabling people to understand the right things about you so that
Mm-hmm.
you can help them in the right way. Because if they don't understand the problems that you solve and how you can help, they don't understand it. And if they don't understand it, they then don't recognize what it is you're doing. And again, like we see so many people right now are feeling undervalued, and they're not feeling like their effort, their value is recognized, is appreciated. But actually, you know, also those very individuals are kind of shying away from sharing
Mm-hmm.
it or showing it. So it's like, I mean, I love this topic. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. And I love the way you've articulated it as well, because I think that really does hit the nail on the head. I think, yeah, it's a really, really tricky subject to navigate. But once you find that confidence in the way that you do it, I mean, part of the one-to-one work I do is around building that compelling vision. Like once you recognize where the gap is, because you don't have gaps in all of it.
Yeah.
I think that the scenario I was talking about yesterday was about landing a particular message for a client. And it was around when we worked through it, it wasn't the message. The message, they were saying it very clearly to me, it was the confidence in delivering the message. So then we built down, well, which parts of the message are you really confident with, and which
Yeah.
is the bit that
Yeah.
actually is the bit that's going to make you stumble in your confidence. And when we actually looked at it like that, they were like, oh, yeah, it's not the actual story of what I'm saying. It's the actual, this part of the message that's going to make me lose my confidence. So that's the bit that we worked on.
Yeah.
They went away with a more confident approach to it. Always good to break it down.
Definitely. So I think, yeah, for me, like this building your version of your introduction for all the different scenarios that you might be in, I think can make such a massive, massive difference. We've just said, like, internally in your role, this is going to help shape the perception of you, of the work you do, of the work procurement does. It's going to help to build your credibility, your influence. It really can, it can done well, it can really enable people to see you at the level that you want to be operating at and the level that you are operating at. So yeah, it's such an amazing opportunity, and so therefore it does deserve some of your thought and your time to think about, actually, what is that version of an introduction that I want to be using? What are the gems and the nuggets of information that I want to share without War and Peace, and without taking, like, a long time to kind of go through it? I mean, in my work, I would say I am most frequently supporting people with how they answer this as an interview question, how they introduce themselves when they're networking in different types of networking scenarios. And then particularly, I would say it's, when you're arriving in a new leadership role, actually, what are then the different versions of your introductions? Because very quickly, when you start in a new role, you're getting wheeled out to everyone, aren't you? All the often C-suite, peers, team members,
Yeah.
suppliers, and you are literally doing a version of that introduction multiple times most days for that first few months
Yeah.
often. So I think that's where I tend to kind of help people. It's normally at those kind of those three moments, but just the interviewing one, you know probably my experience is it's probably in about 80 something plus percent of interviews, the tell me about yourself question is asked. And if it is asked, it's normally one of the first questions. It's often the first question.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so it done well, it can be such an amazing opportunity to set the tone of the conversation. And I talk to our clients a lot about this. Like, actually, a lot of people really don't like this question at all. But I think, like, it's actually a bit of a gift in a way, this question,
Mm.
if you are asked it, because normally, if you think about normal interview questions, they are really specific. Tell me about a time where you've done this. Talk me through this project here on your
Yeah.
CV. How would you approach XYZ? Like, it's really specific, and so many people step away from interview processes wishing they'd had the opportunity to talk about X, Y, and Z, but it never came up. There wasn't a moment. Like, actually, this is your moment. Like, you
Mm.
get to decide. Like, it's one of the only questions that can ever come up in an interview, where it's a totally open answer. You don't have to talk about anything specific. They are saying, like, just tell me whatever it is you want to tell me about yourself. Like, you get to choose. So it just can be such a great way of opening the interview in a really, like, positive way, and setting the tone for the conversation that's to come. And I've definitely seen such a massive difference when people are confident with how they answer that question, and how they tailor it dependent on the type of role, the type of company. Like, their confidence in the rest of the interview is so much stronger.
Yes, I think that's a great way to frame it, isn't it? Because if you can go into that first question, which I agree is very much a given, isn't it? Tell me
Yeah,
about yourself.
yeah,
And I've seen that as well in terms of networking conversations. Like, it's such an easy question to ask as a networker,
yeah. Yeah.
But to be able to then frame it can set yourself up for confidence for the rest of it. So in terms of structure then, so that's our listeners can go away with the structure of how to think about that compelling message that they're giving. How would we structure that then? Are there some steps?
Yeah, I think in terms of length, I would encourage people to have like different lengths of introduction, because I think, in some scenarios, probably it is a less than 30-second type introduction, whereas in other environments, you might have the opportunity to talk for 2, 3 minutes, about what it is you do and who you are. So I think it's like being comfortable that you've got different versions for different scenarios. Personally, I think it's always really good to start with your present positioning, if you like. So saying, who are you? Well, I'm a transformational procurement leader. And I think this is an interesting one, actually. This has come up a lot recently in networking conversations. I know a lot of people feel incredibly uncomfortable introducing themselves whilst networking when they're in between roles. I've had this, multiple people recently have shared, like, actually, it's not necessarily when you're networking, it isn't always tell me about yourself. It's like, so Laura, what do you do? That's the question, isn't it? It's one of the, and I think people feel really, like, some people feel really like embarrassed if they can't say that they're currently in a role. But just because you're not currently in a role doesn't mean that you're still a procurement director, you're
Mm,
still a CPO, you're still a category manager, like that. So it's actually owning, who you are, not necessarily the current job title that you have. So I would start with that, start with the kind of the current positioning, the present positioning. I am this, or I am the, whatever it is, however it is you want to describe yourself. And then I think it's like thinking about, like, how can you show a little bit of what you're known for, or the impact that you have. I think that, I think what you're known for is quite a good one, actually.
mm,
I think that can be quite interesting. So, so it's like, I'm a collaborative procurement director. I think I'm probably most known from the stakeholders I work with for doing X, Y, Z. Like, it
mm,
can be quite quick, but actually it's already shaping kind of the difference that you make and how you're perceived. But then I think it's then trying to tie in the relevance to whoever it is that you're talking to. So in an interview scenario, I always encourage my clients to close their tell me about yourself answer with a direct tie into that company and
mm,
that role. So it's like, okay, I am this type of person. This is the difference I make. Here's a little bit about my current situation. And, when I saw your role, I was really excited because of X, Y, Z, because it ties, really ties in with my experience. Or, in an internal scenario, it might be maybe showing some of the like future direction. Or, even look, I'm part of global procurement. We're on a mission this year to really improve XYZ. So it's like, I think it's just showing a little bit of like the relevance to that person that you're
mm.
talking to, but maybe a bit of that future direction as well.
And I think that's incredibly important when we're thinking about this. Tell me about yourself when you're in front of a stakeholder who has a lot of influence. So let's
Yeah.
say you're talking to a C-suite member who's buying, that you need at that
Yeah,
level, that tying it to the relevance of why it matters to them.
totally.
Because I think that's the other barrier that people often think about is, well, I need to tell them about how great procurement is because it does X, Y, Z. But if it's not relevant to that person's own targets and pressures,
Yeah.
then it could be that they switch off. And like you said earlier, and I think we have touched on this often because it certainly comes up in the perceptions piece of the work that I do around that, is around that if they don't understand it, they'll either ignore it or they'll make a judgment on it. And I
Yeah.
think that's that thing about, well, everybody knows how to buy stuff, right? So therefore I can do procurement. I've got clients who say, I don't need someone to tell me how to do my job. I know how
Yeah.
to do the job really, really well. It's how I get them to see that they need me in the room.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess in conclusion, for me, this is one of those questions that is going to continuously come up in your career, in your role, internally, externally, and actually it's kind of just actually it's such a fundamental part of your positioning and how you are seen. And I'd also just add, like, adapt it, like, don't, having the same message for 3 years probably isn't fit for purpose as well. So I would also keep it quite dynamic and really understand, right, where am I in my career and what is it I'm trying to, do, achieve, where am I trying to get to? Because actually I think, it's almost like you want to be seen at that next level before you are at that next level. So what does that then mean in terms of how you show up and how you introduce yourself and how you create that first impression? So it's
Yeah.
like, be agile with it and just keep reviewing it and keep reflecting on it and keep thinking, you know, are those nuggets still the right nuggets, or actually do I need to adapt it based on, the different audience that I'm now
Mm.
talking to, or the purpose?
Exactly. And we've talked before in a previous episode about the communication styles as well. If you've got somebody who's got very, what I would call red energy, very direct, very straight to the point,
Yeah,
they don't need the details, as opposed to somebody who is more of a blue energy. Sorry, I'm talking
yeah,
insights language now, but then it might be that they need more of the details. So like you say, the carving up of the story is really important too.
yeah,
So I think that's the other thing. To be able to be clear and have the confidence in your own story and why it matters and your own leadership positioning, and then to be able to make sure you adapt that to the people you're talking with. They're
yeah,
the takeaways for
totally.
me.
Yeah, totally. It's another one of those topics that we could talk about for hours, no doubt. But today was intentionally a shorter episode. We're trying to bring, some topic, more bite-sized topics to you. Yeah, hopefully that's been helpful for all of you kind of listening today. Feel free to get in touch with either of us or both of us if you've got any questions. And as always, we do love to hear your feedback. We don't get to see who's dialing in or who's tuning in. And so actually the feedback makes a big difference, because it does help us to shape future topics and, kind of what this evolves into as time goes on. So yeah, please share if you are tuning in.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. All feedback is welcome. So thanks so much for
Absolutely.
tuning into this one. We will see you for the next one.
Yeah, see you later, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.